Today, more than 100,000 daylily cultivars exist in astonishing colors and forms. But there was a time when none of them existed. The transformation began with one man. George Yeld was born in Erdisland, a picturesque village nestled in the heart of Herefordshire, England. His father, also George Yeld, was a successful breeder of pedigree Hereford cattle, and the young Yeld grew up surrounded by plants and agriculture. Educated at Hereford Cathedral School, he later continued his studies at Oxford. While at Oxford he achieved a remarkable distinction. In 1866 he won the prestigious Newdigate Prize for English Verse, an award given each year for the best poem written by an undergraduate. His father had planned for him to pursue a career in law, but it quickly became clear that affinity to education was in his blood. So soon after graduating in 1867, he began teaching at St. Peter's School in York, one of the oldest schools in the world. He stayed on the staff there for an extraordinary 52 years, teaching generations of early teenage boys in classics, English, history, and geography. One of his former students writes,
"He was such a grand old man, and I have such a flood of memories of the happy days under him at St. Peter's. You can never know how many men today feel grateful to have known such a man, and feel they are the better for having known him."
Far from confined to the classroom, Yeld's life was dynamic. He was a devoted member of the Alpine Club and climbed many peaks in Europe, Asia, and Africa. His passion for mountains also echoed in his garden, where he nurtured many alpine plants. His climbing companions found him always warm and friendly to everyone. Kindness seems to be his defining characteristic, and his contemporaries agreed that he was a man who simply wasn't capable of making an enemy. While at St. Peter's, George Yeld lived in an attractive house known as Clifton Cottage, next door to the school. There, he cultivated an extensive garden. Part of it still survives today, though much reduced from its former size. In 1874, he married Frances Anne Hounsfield, but she died just a year later, leaving him with their infant daughter, Frances Dorothea. The death of Frances, known as Fanny, at just 27, came soon after their marriage, and while George had only just begun teaching at St. Peter's School, a sudden and heartbreaking tragedy early in his life. In the beautiful I.H.S. Lindley Library in central London, I discovered a transcript of Yeld's notebook, where he reflects the beginning of his interest in gardening that would eventually change the world of daylilies forever.
In 1877 I began serious gardening at Clifton Cottage, York. I have often reflected how singularly fortunate I was in having such a garden. It had walls on two sides, a high embankment, the back of a rugged rock garden, and on the fourth a shrubbery with tall trees. How well sheltered it was I learnt when a great gale blew down the tents at the York Gala, and the flowers in my garden suffered hardly at all.
Remarkably, some of Yeld's original daylilies still grow in the garden of his former home, now part of the music department at St. Peter's School. His walled garden became his laboratory. Surrounded by plants, a quiet revolution began. He was captivated by the brightness and fragrance of the common yellow daylily. At the nearby Backhouse nurseries, he discovered another species, Hemerocallis middendorfi. He wondered, what would happen if they were crossed?
There were a good many plants of Hemerocallis flavor in the borders, and their brightness and fragrance greatly attracted me. Then I saw a fine clump of Hemerocallis middendorf in the border by the side of the big central walk in the nurseries. Surely it would make a fine cross with flavor. It did, and resulted in Hemerocallis apricot, which gained an award of merit at the Temple Show of 1893.
Apricot is from there on recognized as the first registered daylily. This very moment marked the birth of intentional daylily hybridizing. In contrast to most Yeld varieties, it is still obtainable today, although there seem to be more than one variant of apricot in circulation. Already in his lifetime, Yeld notes,
"There now appear to be several forms of this plant in nurseries.
In 1932, botanist Arlo Burdett Stout writes,
Your excellent apricot has leaves with pink bases, and I am wondering what parent gave this character. Possibly you still have the plants, which you had, when the cross was made?
The mystery of the pink-based leaves persists, as Yeld answers that the original parent plant used in creating apricot was lost when he gave up his York garden. But maybe this trait could be used to find the original cultivar. Apricot marked the birth of daylily hybridization. And so the modern daylily began in Britain. In a poetic way, every modern bloom still carries a trace of those first experiments. From a single garden in York grew a worldwide revolution. In 1877, he married again, Emily Elizabeth Adams, daughter of the Wesleyan minister Thomas Adams. Emily's story began far from England. She was born in 1852 in the so-called Friendly Islands, Tonga, where her father served as a missionary. She was also the niece of the legendary Professor John Couch Adams, who was able to predict the existence of planet Neptune using only mathematics. They had 4 sons and a daughter. The sons of George and Emily all attended St. Peter's. They were active participants in the life of the school, taking part in both sporting events and the traditional theatre productions, which were usually Shakespearean comedies. George Yeld himself often wrote the prologue or epilogue in verse. He also liked to correspond with his friends in verse. To his lifelong friend George Percival Baker,
Hast thou plants in plenty, say, of a species rich and rare, don't forget to give away those thine affluence can spare. For if you gave, you will be given the plant you've lost, and you'll perceive it is the rule approved of heaven, that he who giveth shall receive.
Yeld worked quietly, guided by curiosity and patience. Yet his work changed horticulture forever. Orangeman is generally credited to George Yeld, yet intriguingly, it is not mentioned in his notebook, nor in his correspondence with Arlo B. Stout. Yeld himself noted, in the report of the Third Conference on Genetics, that Orangeman was already in the trade by 1906. Amos Perry, renowned horticulturist, wrote,
Orangeman was raised by a Dutchman, whose name for the moment I have forgotten.
Beyond that brief remark, its origin remains uncertain. What we do know is the plant itself. Orangeman is vigorous, forming dense clumps of dark green, arching foliage. Its scapes carry numerous flower stalks and an abundance of blooms. Whatever its beginnings, it proved popular, and clearly worthy of its place among the early daylilies. On the Third Conference of Genetics in London, in 1906, Yeld reported a new hybrid produced by him, Estmere. Estmere was apparently very similar to Orangeman in stature, habit of growth and disposition of branches. But the flowers were not as orange.
The somewhat slender scapes spread and bend gracefully from the crown, bringing the flowers into various levels with the greater number and the outer rim of the dome of foliage.
The beautiful gold dust is also registered as a George Yeld cultivar, but in fact, he never hybridized it. Benjamin Yo Morrison, a noted American horticulturist and collector of daylilies, wrote that he would probably never obtain the varieties created by George Yeld, but he was happy to grow their equivalents, available in the States, such as gold dust.
The flowers of gold dust and orangeman have 3 broad and 3 narrow segments and less open carriage. In the garden border, however, they make a lovely show. Of the two, which are rather similar, I, personally, prefer gold dust. Both grow about 2 feet high, with lush green foliage and branching stalks just topping the foliage. The flowers of gold dust are empire yellow with brown stained buds.
While not his own hybrid, gold dust was grown and widely promoted by George Yeld. Encouraged by early success, Yeld continued hybridizing for more than 4 decades. His introductions gradually expanded the color range, flower form, and stature of cultivated daylilies. In the notebook, Yeld lists his own varieties, in chronological order. He notes their colors, their strengths and weaknesses, and the awards they won, or in one case, failed to win. Tangerine. There appear to be at least 2 forms associated with the name tangerine. One matches the bright orange flower described by George Yeld and Arlo Stout. The other corresponds to a historical drawing in the archives of the New York Botanical Garden and differs in appearance. It has been suggested that the bright orange form may actually be Flamid, which Yeld recorded as a hybrid between Hemerocallis flavor and Hemerocallis middendorfi. According to Yeld, Flamid actually closely resembled gold dust in growth habit and in the size, shape, and arrangement of its flowers, with nearly the same color. As you can see from the images in this video, recognizing the historic cultivars can often be tricky. Bear in mind, the original tangerine was recorded as a semi-dwarf, standing 46 to 61 centimeters tall. As Stout wrote,
an excellent variety, tangerine, which reaches a height of about 18 inches, is the smallest of the older and well-known clones of cultivated daylilies.
Yeld worked with two named hybrids derived from the species Hemerocallis nana.
A species, not very easy to please, but worth a little extra trouble.
Botanist Arlo Burdett Stout wrote,
George Yeld in England has reported two hybrids with Hemerocallis flava and Hemerocallis nana as parents that are said to be dwarf. These have been given the horticultural names Minikin and Moidor, and in due time may be available in the trade.
Both of these delicate hybrids fell victim to frost in Yeld's garden. It became a calling for George Yeld to popularize the daylily, a perennial that, even today, is often misunderstood by gardeners.
Daylily, its name is a falsehood, for instead of being the beauty of a day, and therefore short-lived, it has so many successive blooms on a stem that its brilliance lasts for many days, and therefore it is comparatively long-lived.
Yeld exhibited many of his daylilies at Royal Horticultural Society shows, earning well-deserved awards. But combining his professional duties with his passion for flowers was no easy task.
To get the flowers to London was difficult. I could not be away from my work for more than a day. So a Monday night train up and Tuesday night train down left me ready for work at 9 on Wednesday morning.
It's a challenge that hasn't changed. Hobby gardeners still face the same task of juggling work with caring for their plants. In January 1936, Yeld wrote to Stout that he was collaborating with his friend G.P. Baker on a handbook on daylilies.
We are hoping to popularize the cultivation of the daylily, but have to walk warily as our resources are not great.
They planned a limited edition of just 400 copies. The plan never realized, but one can only imagine what such a rare volume might be worth today had it ever come to fruition. Another mystery is a variety named Sovereign. It's certainly a hybrid of Hemerocallis flavor and Hemerocallis dumortiri, but apparently it was hybridized by someone else. Yeld actually had an identical plant that he named Beauty. He writes,
Beauty, I believe, is the same as Sovereign. I raised Beauty before Sovereign appeared, but as the name Sovereign appeared first, I withdrew the name.
Stout writes about Sovereign.
This clone is almost a duplicate of the gold dust daylily in habit of growth and season of bloom, but the flowers are paler with more yellow and less orange in the coloring.
Emily, his wife, died in 1921 aged 69 and is buried in York Cemetery. Though she would go on to live the life of a Victorian wife in England, Emily carried with her a childhood touched by distant seas and intellectual distinction, a background as extraordinary as the pioneering work her husband would undertake in the garden. In his letters, Yeld describes many of his creations. Of Winsome, he says that
it has rather a small, soft yellow flower, the perfection of shape and daintiness that satisfies me. Winsome, though it failed to get an AM at Wisley, I consider this one of my prettiest varieties. It has been highly appreciated by my friends. At Wisley, the wrong flower obtained this name, which explains how it failed to obtain an award of merit.
Blooms early. Flower is paler than apricot and somewhat larger. In 1930, Mr. Yeld told the writer that he considered this the best of all his hybrids.
In 1925, Yeld was awarded the Victoria Medal of Honor of the Royal Horticultural Society for his work on hybridizing Hemerocallis and irises, as he was also one of the founders of the Iris Society and its first president. Yeld retired to Orlerton, Gerrard's Cross, Buckinghamshire, to a house belonging to his son Dick. There's something deeply touching in the way he says,
I must admit that my memory is not what it used to be, but I suppose at 83 one can hardly expect it to be. I spend most of my energy amongst my plants. The years on my back rather hamper me.
Despite his age, Yeld continued to produce many interesting hybrids. One of these was J.S. Gaynor, a remarkable variety, with large, deep yellow flowers that opened more widely than most daylilies of its time. It's clear that Yeld was quite taken with J.S. Gaynor, one of his standout cultivars that exemplified his hybridizing vision.
Very vigorous. A great favorite with those who know it. This approaches the open flower at which I have been aiming so long. It has a very large, massive bloom and beautiful foliage, and is in itself a sufficient reward for many years of devotion to the genus.
Yeld seems to have had a favorite seedling that he named Amber.
I have flowered one new plant this summer. The parentage is lost, the color is somewhat between flavor and citrina, the shape is good, the stature satisfactory. I am calling it Amber. Amber seems to me one of the best of the Hemerocallis.
He recounts the lengths he goes to in order to keep the cultivar alive. Since I have not been able to find any trace of Amber today, it may well be that the variety finally succumbed to the maladies described in the notebook.
Amber, to my great disappointment, failed altogether.
Yeld's influence reached far beyond England. Ernest Plouffe, a prominent Massachusetts daylily grower, celebrated Amber as a Yeld's lasting testament.
We are especially appreciative of the wonderful work of the late Mr. Yeld with daylilies at a time when results were very slow. His variety Amber, a very pale lemon, very full, with very heavy substance and of excellent fragrance, is a monument to him.
The shift of cutting-edge daylily hybridizing from Britain to the United States is largely thanks to botanist Arlo Burdett Stout. As director of laboratories at the New York Botanical Garden, he raised more than 50,000 seedlings and introduced over 100 cultivars. His 1934 book laid the scientific foundation for modern breeding. Yet even as his program flourished, Stout reached back across the Atlantic, to George Yeld. Their letters brim with respect and curiosity. Stout wrote,
Your letter is greatly appreciated. It is a pleasure from one who has done so much in the breeding of daylilies. I expect to be in Europe in July and August. I am anticipating with great pleasure seeing you and talking with you, and I shall appreciate and greatly prize continued correspondence with you.
Stout sought Yeld's insight into the earliest hybrids, while sharing his own breakthroughs and experiences. Yeld, rather than guarding his achievements, warmly praised the American advances.
Please accept my hearty congratulations on having completed so excellent a work. All growers of Hemerocallis must feel very grateful to you, and I the most grateful of all. I'm glad to say I flowered your Mikado, and think it one of the very best.
The existence of Yeld's Stout letters is historically important because they form a direct bridge between the first British experiments in hybridizing and the rise of American daylily culture. Stout actively sought out Yeld, recognizing his importance and learning from his work. This in turn elevates Yeld's place in daylily history, not as a minor precursor but as a figure whose work mattered to Stout and influenced the American program. But beyond this, it captures a passing of the torch, from the first daylily hybridizer to the man who would revolutionize the genus. These letters remind us how collaboration and shared passion can bridge oceans, generations, and time. Sirius marked another step forward. Yeld described it as having bright orange flowers with reddish-purple speckling at the throat and reflexed petals. This subtle introduction of throat markings foreshadowed the eye zones that later became central to modern daylily breeding. He created varieties of new colors, shapes, and sizes. And in his letters Yeld describes Sirius as a very good performer. Others share that view.
Sirius by Yeld is striking and distinct. Bright orange reflexed petals deepening to reddish purple.
Described in 1925, Radiant was considered by George Yeld to be one of his best, a vigorous plant bearing masses of clear cadmium yellow flowers. It received the Royal Horticultural Society's Award of Merit the following year. Yeld himself praised it as
an ornament to any garden.
Radiant was George Yeld's last descendant from the species Hemerocallis thunbergi. A richly orange-colored and profusely flowering variety, it was not easy to produce. Many attempts to get seed from thunbergi failed, and then, suddenly, it proved more fertile even than flavor. Correctly identifying the plants created by Yeld is a task fit for a daylily detective. Their preservation remains an important task because these plants are not merely historical curiosities. They are living links to the origin of daylily hybridization. Yeld's letters reveal that many of his finest hybrids existed as single clumps, which he was understandably reluctant to divide.
I'm sorry I cannot send you plants of my best new varieties. Naturally, I am rather shy about cutting them up. Eventually, of course, I shall have to harden my heart.
Had his cultivars been shared more widely, more might have survived. Not all endeavors were successful though. George Yeld also dreamed of hybridizing with Hemerocallis fulva, but never succeeded.
As to fulva, I have many times used pollen of it, but never with success, and it, moreover, refuses to seed. I have looked for seed of it in many places, but I have never yet found a single pod, and fairly persistent inquiries have failed to bring to light an instance of its seeding.
It took the extraordinary persistence of Arlo Burdet's Stout to overcome its resistance, and the work was then advanced in England by Amos Perry. From this breakthrough came the deeper colors, the reds and pinks that define modern daylilies. On the 2nd of April, 1938, Yeld's long life came to a quiet close. He was found in his chair, his Bible open at Psalm chapter 121.
I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth.
In teaching, in climbing, in writing, and in gardening, George Yeld lived a life of quiet richness. In 2018, the Civic Society in York erected a blue plaque in honor of Yeld's work on the outside of Clifton Cottage, now the music school, where Yeld and his family lived. The occasion was made all the more special by the presence of George Yeld's great-great-granddaughter, Penny Rainford. Today, when modern cultivars display colors and forms unimaginable in his time, it is worth remembering where it began, with a schoolmaster in York, carefully transferring pollen from one flower to another, and waiting to see what might emerge. From those early crosses grew one of the world's most beloved garden plants, a perennial unmatched in horticulture, with 100,000 varieties spanning an extraordinary range of shapes, heights, and colors. And yet, for all this extraordinary diversity, the true charm of the daylily remains just as Yeld knew it: simple, generous, and wonderfully easy to grow.
Strange as it may seem, horticulture has become so popular that difficulty in growing a plant well is almost a recommendation in itself among enthusiastic gardeners, and yet, no doubt, there are still cultivators who are thankful to come across a bright-colored fragrant bloom whose good nature, if not a liberal education, is yet redolent of a generous kindliness. Such an one is the Hemerocallis. Easy to grow, easy to please, easy to see across the garden, easy to distinguish by its scent, and easy to divide if you are fain to share its delights with a friend.